That's amazing. Wow. Yeah, that's really something. It's really something. Normally, you see, just to tell you that you can notice the blue light has to be solid. If the blue light is flashing, that's something is wrong. I just picked my face up to look at Rich, and I saw the blue light was flashing.
See, we can't see it.
Well,
We can't see the blue light.
well, it's my responsibility, you know. I mean, so anyway. So we're holding 5 lines from the bottom of Daf Tzadi Amid Beis. Itmar Chosma Bekel. If what happened is Irving did what was tantamount to muzzling the animal. When the animal bent down to eat, Irving shouted at it, "Stop!" Or Hinhiga Bekel. Or it was a team of a donkey and a ox, which is Kloyim, and Irving led the animal not with an ox goad, but with his voice. Rabbi Yochanan says he's chayiv. Reish Lakish amapater. Reish Lakish says he's pater. Rabbi Yochanan says he's chayiv because akimas piv he maisa. The movement of his lips is considered an action. Reish Lakish amapater. Kala lo yave maisa. That's dvarim ba'alma. That's not considered a maisa, and you don't get malchus. Says Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan has a pretty nifty raya to Reish Lakish. It says Loisha Adam Rashai Lahomer. Not that a person is allowed to affect the exchange. One of the lavim in the Torah is that you cannot affect a tmura. You're not allowed to affect the tmura with an animal of kachim. If you have an animal of kachim and you say zeh tachazeh, this is instead of this, the din is they both become holy. But you're over a lav daraisa. Correct. Not that a person is allowed to affect the change. If he does say zed tachazed, they both become kodesh. You get malchus. Rabbi Yochanan says, you see, just for saying something, you get malchus. Amalei, so Rabbi Yochanan says, look, Hamani Rabbi Yehudi. That's going according to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda's famous sheet in Shas, the lav shein by Maisa like in a love. Here's Mo. Baruch Hashem, Mo, I'm so happy to see you. So happy to see you. We were talking about you and we were learning for you.
Thank you, Rabbi. I'm trying to get out of here tonight. And I got to get my dialysis. And, everything doesn't work. So with the medicine and the social worker to get the treatment. So it's not going easy.
But I see you don't have the mask on your face.
No, I've just got oxygen, and that's it.
All right, Baruch Hashem. I'm glad to see you, Mo. You should get home to your own bed quickly.
Yes, you have my name there.
Yes, we said it. We said it earlier. Give it to me again.
Moshe Yitzchak Alevi.
Moshe Yitzchak Alevi ben Nechama should have a refuah shalema b'seich shechel Yisrael.
Thank you, Rabbi.
And again, I want to point out to all our listeners, 97-year-old strong and attending from the hospital. That's really...
Thank you,
97 years.
97 years young, 97 years strong. It's really, really, Mo, as I said it before, you're an inspiration to all of us.
Thank you, Rabbi.
It really is unbelievable. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan says, look, Hamani Rabbi Yehudi, Damalav Shem by Ma'isa Loikanalav. An example of a lav shem b'maisa is noiser. It says that you should not leave over kachim overnight. So noiser is a lav shem b'maisa because it becomes left over by itself, right? Rabbi Yehuda says that you're liking on a lav shem b'maisa. Says the Gemara, mi matzis mukmas loka Rabbi Yehuda. Can you say that this is going like Rabbi Yehuda? The din of Tmura is going like Rabbi Yehuda? Vakatani Reisha, it says in the Reisha, Kol Mamirin, everybody could affect the Tmura Echad HaNashim ve'Echad HaNashim, whether men, whether women. Va'avinam, and we wondered, Hakol La'asuyei Mai, what is Hakol? Everyone. If you already said men and women, what does everyone come to include? La'asuyei Yairish, it comes to include that if a man died and his son inherited the animal, the son could affect the Tmura from his father's carbon, or the like Rabbi Yehuda, and then therefore this is going not like Rabbi Yehuda. The Rabbi Yehuda, because if it's going according to Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Yairish Eina Meimer, a Yairish cannot affect the Tmura, and Yairish Eina Yisamech, he doesn't do smicha, leaning with all his might between the horns on the carbon of his father. So the Gemara says, well, that's no sweat. Hai Tana Savala Kavase Bechada. He holds like Rabbi Yehuda that you get Malchus for a lav shem b'maisa or Polagale Bechada. And he argues because he holds that a Yairish can make a Tmura. Okay, new halacha. Tan Rabbanan. Hachoisem es apara, if a person muzzles his cow, Marshall muzzles his cow, because Marshall came tonight with Ben Gay, ready? So I saw a big tube. If Marshall muzzled his cow, vidoshba, and he threshed with it, so loike, he gets malchus, because he did the lav of muzzling the cow. But also, now he deprived his cow, not his cow, he deprived the owner of the cow, because he had rented the cow from Eddie, so he deprived the owner of the cow from his food. So, umeshalim dalit kavim lapara, he has to compensate and give 4 kav for a cow, and gimel kavim lechamar, and 3 kav for a donkey. But that's what normally the animal would eat. Says the Gemara, but I don't understand. We don't give double jeopardy. Once Marshall has to get malchus, he shouldn't have to pay. I know Marshall was running away, but here now we're talking about his defense. Once he gets malchus, he shouldn't have to pay. Here you're saying that he gets malchus and he has to pay. Well, we learn in Mesechtes Makis, it says Kidei Rishasai, Mipnei Rishas Achas Ata Mechayev, Ata Mechayev L'Shtei Rishayis. So what's going on over here? Says the Gemara, Va'ena Loike Meis, a person doesn't get malchus and die. In other words, we don't do both, even though normally when a person is executed, they're being over a lav, but we don't give both malchus and execution. Ve'ena loike mishalma, we don't give malchus and make him pay. So why does he have to pay the owner of the cow? Amar Abaye, so Abaye says no sweat. Hamani Rameiri, it's going according to Rameir, dama loike mishalma. That you get malchus and you have to pay. Rava says a different thing. Rava says when it says that he doesn't have to pay, it means that Bezdin cannot force him to pay. But he does have a requirement to pay. See, there's a difference. Rava Amar, and Rava brings his proof in a very profound way. Rava Amar Esnan Osra Torah. The Torah answered an Esnan, the pay of a harlot, Va'afilu Ba'alimai, even if a person hired his mother. In other words, the person that he paid the harlot's fee was to sleep with his mother. Now, for sleeping with his mother, he gets capital punishment. And now that makes no difference. It makes no difference whether the mother is a is a married woman or not a married woman, right? It's a Isser Misa to sleep with his mother. Now, even though if the mother would insist, give me my pay, he wouldn't have to pay because he gets capital punishment. He gets capital punishment, he doesn't have to pay. But yet, we learned that the sheep that she would pay him with is also to be brought on the Mizbeach. But if he doesn't have to pay her, why should it be also on the Mizbeach? And the answer is because he is required to pay. It's just that you cannot extricate it in Bezdin. So the Gemara says, Rav Papa, and here also, Marshall is mechuyev to pay even though he gets malchus. We just can't extricate it in court. Rav Papa has a different answer. Third answer. Rav Papa says, you know why Marshall has to pay? He became responsible for the food, for the grub of the cow or the donkey as soon as he rented the donkey. The malchus he doesn't get until he muzzles it. So it's not at the same time. Rav Papa Amar, Mishas Meshicha, as soon as he made the kinyan on the rental, which in the case of an animal is Meshicha pulling it, he became chayiv with the 3 kav for the donkey and the 4 kav for the cow. But Milka Loilaki, he didn't become responsible for Malchus at Shas Chasima until he muzzles it. So the Chiyah preceded it, and that's why he has to pay. Now, the Gemara now goes a little bit into a tangential discussion. Amar Papa, I told you, Michal Avram, that this is a trait of both Mishnayos and the Talmud. It gets into tangential discussions. This is the way we fit all knowledge in. There's certain things that don't fit. That's correct. That's correct. Amar Rav Papa, Hani Mili Ba'umi Noi Debei Rav Papa Barabba. These matters were inquired in the academy of Rav Papa Barabba, Upashte Luhuli Isura, and he resolved them both by saying they're both prohibited. Chada Kehilchasa, one is according to the law, the Chada the Lav Kehilchasa, and one is a Lefnim Mishuras Hadin. He asked it as a Chumrah. The first one, which is strict law, is what's the din with milchik bread? Can you knead dough with milk? Can you make milchik bread? And he said no, because we're afraid that if you make milchik bread, you can't see that it's milk, because you might have a tongue sandwich with it. Rich says, that bread looks soft, and I'm going to have myself a turkey bologna sandwich with mustard. And here it's milchik bread. So partially Yisur Kehilchasa. The Tanya ain't loshin as a Isa b'chalav. You cannot knead the dough with milk. V'im losh. If you knead the dough with milk, kolapas kula asura. All of the bread is awesome because it could lead a person to sin. Could have a tongue sandwich with it. Similarly, the same way is the other way. If you make fleishcha bread, ain't toshin as a taner ba'aliyah, you cannot coat the oven with the schmaltz of the tail of an animal. You know, they want to make it really, really good schmaltz. So and here, Rich is going to have a grilled cheese sandwich. Yeah! A grilled cheese sandwich. V'im tosh and if you did, kalapas kula asura, all bread that's made in that oven is asur, ad sheyasek esatan, until you burn out the oven from the schmaltz of the tail. V'idach, And the other Shaila, Boi Munoi, they inquired of him, Ma'u lahachnis min v'she'enoi minoi l'dir. What's the din? Can Shelley put a male of one species and a female of another species in the corral? Now, he's not mating them. He's just putting it there. It says, Behem tuchaloi sarvia kiloyim. You're not allowed to mate diverse species. He's not mating them. He's just letting nature take its course. Upashtilu isura, and he resolved that it's forbidden. The lav kihilchasa, not according to the strict letter of the law. The Amar Shmuel says, Ubimina'afim, the din is that if you want to give testimony that there was adultery, let's say a woman sleeps with another man. So what do the witnesses have to see? So it says, as long as you see that he's on top of her, that's enough to give testimony. You don't have to actually see that his male organ is in her oisemakim. You don't have to see that. Ubikloyim, but by mating animals, ad sheyachnis kimikol b'shveiferes. It's not, you're not chayiv until you see it like the dipper in the tube. When you apply medicine, you take the dipper and you put it in the tube. So mating animals is only forbidden if you actually take the animal's male organ and you put it into the female's orifice. So therefore, just putting them in the corral shouldn't be usher, but he was machmir. If it says your animals you should not mate without the word kiloyim, I might say that it's telling us that Yidden should not mate animals. Why? Because it could give them thoughts, immoral thoughts. It's not good for them. It's not healthy for them. Talmud kiloyim, it tells us only kilayim is awesome. But a regular species, a person could be a breeder, and he could actually put a male animal on top of a female animal, and he doesn't have to worry about having sinful thoughts. But what do we see from here? Lav michlal de kloyim achiza namiloi. It's forbidden to even just hold the female on her horns and keep her in place when the male is mounting it. It's not only like Shmuel says, kimikol b'shveiferes, taking the male organ and inserting it in the female's orifice. Says, no. My achiza, when it says holding it, it means haknasa. It means taking the male organ and putting it in the female orifice. My kari lo achiza, and why is it called holding it? That's just a euphemism. Lishna ma'alya, it's just a euphemism. Amr Rab Yehuda, min b'minai, as I said, if it's min b'minai, if it's an ox with a cow, mutar lahachnis kimikol b'shveiferes. The breeder, the Yiddish breeder, is allowed to actually take the male organ and put it into the female orifice. Va'afilu mishum pritzusa leka. We're not worried that it will lead a person to become lewd. We're not worried about that. Why? My time about vidite Torah, the same heter that we use for a male obstetrician. Why aren't we worried that he's doing something with a married woman by Oisa Makam? Why aren't we worried that he's going to have prurient thoughts? Why aren't we worried that about lewdness? It's because he's busy with his parnasa. He's preoccupied with his parnasa. So Maser Rav Achad Boy Bar Ami. So Rav Achad Boy Bar Ami asked, it says, Ilu nema behem tuchaloi sarvia. If it says that your animals you shouldn't mate, a person shouldn't hold down the female's horns, only if it's kiloyim who does, only if it's different species. But the implication is that only to hold the horns. But that implies that take the male organ and put in the female organ, that's forbidden. Says, well, no. My achiza, what does it mean to hold? It means achnasa. It means taking the like the applicator in the tube. Actually, taking the male organ is permitted by min b'midai. My karle achiza. Why is it only called holding it? Lishna mali, only to use a more refined speech. We welcome in Ruvain Pollack, who is now joining us. As it's good, as I always say, it's good for people to come whenever they can come. This is very tricky times these days with Mariv and Svira and all kinds of things. So whenever you could come, you are more than welcome to come. Now, Amar Rav Ashi, Ha Milsa, Boy Minei Debei Rab Nechemia Reish Galusa. This matter was inquired of me by the Rab Nechemia of the house of the Reish Galusa. What about if you put into the corral not the question that we asked by Shelley, where he put in 2 different species? Here, you put in a male of one species, a female of the other species, and a male of a species, a female of the same species, and a female of a different species. Is that allowed? Now, argument is that they're going to mate the same species. They're attracted more to the same species. So maybe it's allowed. So, a male and female of the same species, plus a female of a different species. Do we say, Kevan the Ika Mine, since it has a female of its own species, Basar Mine Garer, it will naturally follow its own species. O Dilma Afilu Achiloi, even so, it's not allowed. Upashtalei Yisura, and again, Rav Ashi says, I was Machmir, Deloi Kilchas, really, Allah Lamaisa, it should be allowed. However, in the house of the Reish Galusa, there were Avodim. And if you allow it, then there's a worry that the Avodim who are not trustworthy, they're lax in their way of doing the halacha, they might come to mate the min with the she'ena minai. And therefore I didn't want them to be around. I was therefore machmer mishum pritzusa da abdei. Now, new Mishnah. We know that the worker is allowed to eat when he is working. So if he was working with his hands but not with his feet, he was picking the grapes, right? Harvesting the wheat. Or baraglov, if he was working with his feet, let's say he was threshing with his feet, because remember we said that even if it's detached, as long as it's not chayiv and meiser, he could still eat. But he's not working with his hands. Or afilu b'kseifai. Let's say he's not using his hands or his feet, he's transporting on his back. And that would be a case where he's transporting wheat where we said that if it's not yet chayiv in challah, he's allowed to eat. How is that oichel? Rabbi Yehuda says a big chiddush. He learns a big chiddush. He can't eat, which this really restricts his ability to eat. He can't eat unless he's working with both his hands and his feet. We're going to see, because if you remember, Rabbi Yehuda says, if you remember, we had a hekish where we juxtaposed the chaysim to the nechsam, the muzzler to the one that's being muzzled. And an animal works with both its hands, because its forelegs are, it's called its hands, and its hind legs, its feet. Very interesting drasha. Now, what's the reason of the Tanakama? My timer, kisaba bekem reacha. When you come into the vineyard of your friend, you could eat bekol ma'adavid, whatever you're doing, even if you're only working with your hands. My time in the Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. What's the reason, Rabbi Yosef Yehuda? Because remember we said that we're makish the chaysim to the nechsam. So kishar mashar achiyasa biyadav b'raglav. The ox works with both its hands and its feet, with its forelegs, which are called its hands, and its feet. Apoyel achiyasa biyadav b'raglav. So now here's an interesting shayla. This could only happen to Marshall. Marshall wants to know if he's threshing with geese or with roosters. Are they allowed to eat? They're only on two.
Frankfurters only.
Are they allowed to eat? Somehow I think that Eliyahu is not going to give that answer. But I'm just guessing, Marshall. I'm just guessing. So says the Gemara, if you're threshed with geese and chicken, Rabbi Yehuda says it has to be the foreleg and the hind legs. Mao. Do we say that teaches it has to be b'kol koichai b'ina, with all of its strength? In other words, with all of its prowess. Va'ika, that's all of the prowess of the goose. Oidilma b'yada b'ragla b'ina, it has to be with the foreleg and the hind legs. V'haleka, you don't have that. Teku, tishbi yataretz, kushas v'bayis. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba Baravua. This is an interesting thing. We're going to learn in the next Mishnah that when Marshall is working with grapes, he's not allowed to eat the figs. When he's working with figs, he's not allowed to eat the grapes. Now, therefore, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba Baravua, Poyalim, workers, Ad shaloi hilchu shesi ve'erev begas, if they didn't work yet one time along the width and the length of the press, shesi ve'erev means, vertically and horizontally, or horizontally and vertically, they didn't work, or east to west and then south to north. If they didn't crisscross one time the press area, that means that the grapes that were collected, they did not yet start oozing wine. So in that case, anobim, oichlin anobim, they could have grapes, but vein shois in yayin, they can't drink wine, because that's like working with grapes and eating figs. But once they went crisscross, lengthwise and widthwise, through the press, then the wine started oozing, so it's considered that they're working with wine as well. Then oichlin anavim, then they could eat grapes, v'shoisin yayin, and drink the wine, as we welcome in Michael, Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg. As we're starting the Mishnah on the Tzadik Aleph, Tzadik Aleph is a great gematria. It's the gematria of Amen. It's the gematria of Aleph, Daled, Nun, Yud, and Yud, Kei, Vav, Kei. It's the gematria of Sukkah. It's the gematria of Malach. Rich also says it's the gematria of Machal, food too. So, he's thinking about the barbecue still. Today was a nice day to barbecue. So anyway, if Gedalia was working with figs, he can't eat grapes. If he was working with grapes, he can't eat figs. However, Gedalia can hold his appetite. And wait, you don't say that he has to eat uniformly the whole time. No. He could wisely, he could withhold himself until he gets to the good stuff, like we said, the Rosh Oyman, the front row, it's sun-baked grapes, normally you would only allow to eat while you're working. However, it's better for the boss that he works when he's idle. It shouldn't be a loss for the boss's time. Therefore, that Gedali could eat while he's going from one row to the next row. And when he's returning from the press, and by the donkey when it's getting unloaded. Now, we'll talk about that tomorrow in the Gemara. Here's an interesting shayla. Gedalia is working on one vine. Could he take, Gedalia is a connoisseur, and he sees those grapes on the next vine. They're heavenly. So he's working with one vine. Can he take the grapes from another vine? And Gedalia has eagle eyes. Do we say memin sha'ata noisin lekelev shel balabayis ba'inan? It has to be the species that he's working with, va'ika. It has to be from the vine that he's putting in to the basket. This is a different vine. If you'll say that if you'll say that when you're working on one vine, you can't take from another vine, so then how could an animal eat from what's attached to the ground? An animal is ahead of the plow that he's pulling. So actually the plow is working on one area, his mouth is already on a different area. So how is he allowed to eat? Says the Gemara, Rav Shesha Bereder Avidi B'Sracha. It's talking about a long vine. It's a long vine. Tajma. So now we're going to try to resolve this question. If Gedalia is working with figs, he's not allowed to eat grapes. But figs and figs which are similar to figs and grapes, that means it's a fig. He's working a fig on one tree, he wants to take the figs from another tree. Eichel. But if it's true that if you're working on one vine, you're not allowed to work in another vine, so Rav Shesha Bereder Avidi has an answer. Amar Rav Shesha Bereder Avidi b'moidless. What happened is he's working with two vines that are entangled one with the other. And since, even though he's working with one of the vines, but since he has to pick up the entangled vine in order to pull up off the grapes that he's removing from the vine that he's working on, he's allowed to take from the entangled vine too, because it's considered like he's working with both. Tajma. So now the Gemara says, Aval meneyes atzmai, he could withhold himself ad shemagia l'mokem hayofes, until he gets to the good ones. Wait, what? Why does he have to withhold himself? If you're allowed to work in one vine and take from another vine, let him just take it, walk over and take it. Why does he have to withhold himself? Let him just walk over and take it. Says, no, that's not a shaila. He can't walk over and take it, because then he would be wasting the time of the employer. Therefore, like that he's not allowed to do. The question is, Gedalia is smart. He comes to the field with his wife, with his son, and he has his wife bring him the good stuff. Is that allowed? His wife and his children. The Gemara could have said also, if he could reach it without interrupting his work. But the Gemara says, no, you're most of the time you're interrupting your work if you break stride. But Gedalia comes with the missus. He knows what he's doing. So Tashma, V'kulon lo yamru ela b'shas malach. We only say it's allowed to be done at the time of work. But in order that he shouldn't pause in his work to eat, they could eat when they're going from one road to another. Now, the Gemara says their thinking, the thinking is that walking from one road to another is part of work. You can't work on the next row unless you walk there. So that's part of work. Savrua, mahalach ka'isa maisadami. And therefore, he is working. So what's Tashavas Aveda? He's still working. But the trick is that he could take it's only al sidrabanan that he could eat, but midaraisa lo yachal. But biblically he can't eat, because when he's walking and he takes from the row that he's not working on, that's taking from one vine while he's working on another vine. And the only reason we allow him to do it is because of Hashavas Aveda. And that's why we need the heter that he could take it, because otherwise he's not working on that vine. So how is he allowed to take it? Adrabah, he's walking away from that vine, so he's not working on it anymore. So how is he allowed to eat it? Says Mer, loy. Working on one vine, you could eat from another vine. The chiddush of Hashavas Aveda is because walking is not considered working. As we welcome in Yehuda from Yerushalayim. Or mahalach lav ka'isa ma'asadami. That's not considered like doing work. Now the Gemara now is going to just tell us the same thing, but switch around the order. Ikadamre. Savrua mahalach lav ka'isa ma'asadami. That walking is not considered working. V'hainu taima d'midoraisa lo yachal. Biblically, he wouldn't be able to eat because he's not working, and a pile can only work while he's working. Mishum delav ka'isa ma'asadami. Ha'oisa ma'asa, but if it's considered working, achal midoraisa. he could eat even though he's not working in that vine. Alma, oisa gefen zeh, working on one vine, oichel begefen acher, he's allowed to eat from another vine. Says Malay, leimelach oisa begefen zeh, ein oichel begefen acher. Working on one vine, you're not allowed to work on another vine. Omahalech, and walking is ka'oisa ma'asadami, is considered work. So that wouldn't be the chiddush. The chiddush is, you're allowed to take, even though you're not working on that vine, because otherwise you would be wasting the time of your employer. We'll stop over here, Rabbi Isai, and we did the Mishnah Yomis already, because now we have a spectacular, if I may say so myself, it's not nice to say that about your own share, but a spectacular Chumash share.